Good evening. Welcome to Tea with Me, my conversations with creatives from the alternative and goth subcultures around the world. My name is Lisa, and today I'm talking to Dusty from Vision Video, a post punk band from Athens, Georgia, America. Young people know Dusty also from TikTok, where he is Goth Dad giving advice and making jokes. Today, our conversation is a bit more serious. We talk about his music career, his time in the military, and why Nazis need to fuck off. Hello, Dusty. Thank you
Hi.
for joining me on the
Absolutely.
YouTube channel. Nice to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Before we get into our conversation, I wanted to share with you the tea that I've chosen for our interview today. I picked out this mug just for you because I feel like this guy's going to come up, which is like
Ah, perfect.
my
Yeah.
and I'm wondering what you're drinking out of and what you're drinking tonight.
I I'm drinking out of my Scaredy Cat mug, and I realized that I don't have any tea that isn't throat coat because I have like so much of it from tour. And I'm drinking a lovely Pinot Noir out of this actually.
Well, cheers to you and whatever your poison is for today. Um, So I want to talk to you about your band
Hmm.
and your activism, but I'd like to start where I start with most interviews, which was how you discovered alternative and goth culture in your life. If you could talk to me about what the spark was, what the first window gateway was for you.
Yeah, I think it started really. I mean, I have to give credit where credit is due. And my sister is 6 years older than me. And when I was, around the age of like maybe 9 or 10, she was a teenager and she was definitely into sort of the goth subculture and the music, but especially aesthetically, she was very visibly goth. And I didn't really understand the sort of gravitas of like goth everything. I was just like kind of a weird kid also. I was really into horror movies. I still am. But I got into horror at a really young age. And yeah, and something about kind of her and her friends always seemed very like ethereal and sort of surreal and like demure to me. And I thought they were like the coolest people and they probably thought I was really annoying. But I just appreciated like how every time I saw her and her friends it was like, oh, it's just like a little puff of smoke of Halloween that day. But I guess moving on later, as I became a teenager, probably around the age of 13 or 14, there were a couple like really uh, sort of iconic moments of my upbringing or finding the stuff to me that like really cemented it all. And that was like the first thing was I was uh, on a flight. It was the first time I'd ever flown by myself because I was going up to visit my aunt and uncle who live in New Hampshire. So I was flying from Atlanta to like Boston or something. And this is back, I am also an old. So this is back when you had the armrest radio station where you like plugged in because there weren't like TVs. For those of you youths out there, we used to entertain ourselves and
There was one screen with one movie that everybody watched.
yeah, you either watched that and you had to listen to the sound of it on the armrest radio station. But the cool thing was is that there were like multiple stations at that point, so you could flip through, and there was like a classical station and like whatever, like different genres. And for whatever reason, and I would really love to know who did this, but sometime in the I guess it was the late 90s, somebody with Delta Airlines programming was like super into like goth and post punk stuff because I was so excited. I was like, oh, I'm on my own. I feel like a big boy, like flying off to Boston. And I plugged in to the radio thing, and the first song that came on was Dear Prudence the cover of Susie and the Banshees, the Beatles cover, and it was just so like something. I mean, it just like stopped me. I was like, "Whoa, what is that?" And I listened to it, and I was like, "This is really cool." And I literally wrote down lyrics because I was like, "I don't know, I didn't know the song," and I wrote it down. Another thing from the olden days when you didn't have phones, so I had to write down the lyrics on a napkin and I put it in my pocket. But it wasn't a fluke. It was like, Dear Prudence. I still, this is so many years and I still remember this. It was Dear Prudence. The next song was Warm Leatherette. It was the Grace
Oh,
Jones version. And then the next song was, I think it was like Joy Division or something like that. It was so bizarre. It was like, who, and at the time I was just like, oh, this is cool music. But like now I look back in my late 30s and I'm like, who the hell was doing like,
it's like there's one token goth in every office, and
yes.
so whoever was at the airline, in the radio division
Yeah.
of the airline, there was like one.
But it's funny to me because it's oh, like just thinking about like airline travel and how miserable it kind of generally is. And you're like, I know what these people need, some really depressing, weird music. But so that was like a really big moment for me because I got to my aunt and uncle's house and that was, fledgling internet days. And I like looked up the lyrics and it was like, oh, this is Susie and the Banshees. Like, what is this? And I saw people that looked like my sister and I was like,
Right.
okay. So I started to kind of formulate my flavor for my taste for that flavor of it around that. But then there's also this one movie called Night of the Demons, which is a very like ridiculous B movie. It's got Linnea Quigley. It's about this goth girl who brings all the popular kids up to this haunted like mansion, this abandoned haunted mansion supposedly, and they have a Halloween party. But she gets possessed and it sort of turns into like a kind of quasi zombie movie. But there's this one scene uh, where the main character Angela, the goth girl, does this sort of strip tease, for lack of a better term, to the song Stigmata Martyr by Bauhaus. And I remember watching this movie and I was like, whatever this is for me. And so that's kind of, those were like two moments I think that really pushed me over the ledge of like getting into it. I kind of started to just go to the record stores here in Athens, Georgia, because I lived out in the middle of nowhere, like about 30 minutes outside of Athens. And we have some very iconic record shops here that are still here, like Low Yo-Yo Records and the Wuxtree. And there was another one called School Kids though, and this guy named Ross, he's no longer with us, but he was sort of like the archetypal musician that worked at a record store and was like he was just kind of quiet and he was like not judgmental, but you could tell he was like kind of judging you every time you walked in there to go buy something. But I used to go ask him like, "Hey, what should I like this record? What should I get next?" And he would just be like, "Oh, hold on." I'd be like, "I like Bauhaus. Where do I go from here?" And he was like, well, here's like Tones on Tail, and here's, you know, like all this like obscure post punk stuff like Comsat Angels or whatever. I also got really into like that parallel time that I was getting into like goth and post punk. Under that same umbrella is like industrial, and I was getting into like Cabaret Voltaire and Coil and like legendary Pink Dots and like all these really really weird bands, but I loved it. And it was a lot of it was because of those like old guys, like middle-aged men at record stores being like, here you go kid. And yeah, so that, and Athens didn't really have a big goth scene. So I had two of my really great friends were dating at the time, and they were a bit older than me as well. And their names were Lori and Josiah, and they moved to Atlanta, and they would bring me to Atlanta to go to the actual goth nights. And it's like, wow, this is. It feels like anything is possible, and I can be as weird as possible, and it's okay to do it in this environment. Uh, and that just all that really spoke to me because I was also like a very latent bisexual kid, and
Mhm.
I was not like I had not come to terms with that. I didn't come to terms with that for quite a long time after high school, and so. But anyway, it's just like the androgyny and the sort of like gender bending of it all felt so comfortable and so much at home because there is absolutely a part of me that is extremely feminine and like loves makeup and loves sort of softer, gentler side of everything, and yeah, I don't know. It just like that going to those first goth nights around the age of like 17 or 18 in Atlanta with like Lori and Josiah just like changed my life. It made me understand that there's a place for this and that's special and that's something to like really hold on to.
Thank you for sharing that. I hear, you know, things that remind me of my own story, although I'm older and come from a different place. Like,
Yeah.
I was also from a small town, and you're writing down the lyrics, the Susie lyrics. I can remember being in the back of the car, heading home, after being in like the big city, and the radio station was playing Bela Lugosi's Dead. Now, I didn't know what that was, and
Right.
I didn't know who Bela Lugosi was. And as we got further away from the city, the radio station got more and more staticky and crackly. So I'm trying to go like, "Who's dead? What is dead? Who's dead?" Like
Right.
I'm trying to like make it out because I wanted to be able to like look up what this song was.
Yeah.
Just trying to find these like little pieces of information,
Yeah.
and like you say, like they're all like opening your mind up.
I'm envious in some ways that kids now can just type in something on their phone or computer and have all of the information. But it's also like when you have too much access, the opinions of people that have no idea what they're talking about also muddy the waters. And I'm not one of these people. Like, I think that the conversation of like what is goth music is it's such an ephemeral umbrella that encompasses so many things, and some people have a very very like purist form of that and some people don't. I'm somewhere in the middle, but I do understand that like when you sort of reduce subculture to an aesthetic or a product especially like, and there are so many companies that do that now, it's like buy this cool outfit of the day and you're just like,
Yeah.
man, this just feels cheap. And it sucks because these kids deserve to have something cool, especially now when everything is fucking terrible. Like it's not okay. And I mean this in no uncertain terms. This music and the scene and all this stuff like literally saved my life like
Mhm.
multiple times. It saved my life when I was a kid. It saved my life when I was in the military and a fire department, and it saves my life now because it's like it gives me a thing to put all that. It's like a portal of catharsis to put all that negative energy of all the things that I've been through in my life that I like would rather not let destroy me.
Yeah.
And that's I don't know. So I want it's like we have to kind of do this balancing act, this like tightrope walk now of being gentle with the younger people to be like, "Hey, come on in. This is for you. I know you're me and I'm you 20 years ago. Come on in." But then also being like, but there are rules. There's like left and right limits to these things. Not everything that you see that's spooky and weird is goth.
I mean, we could have a whole other conversation about gatekeeping for sure.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm going to ask you about your relationship with the baby bat generation on TikTok. But I just wanted to um talk about a place where our lives, you and I, like definitely separate because when you're 18, 19, going to clubs, you're not in a band at this point.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it that you went into the military.
Yeah.
How old were you when you went into the military?
I was 20 years old when I joined. I was just before it was like a couple months before I was turned 21. Yeah.
So you're a young man in America. You've joined the military. You eventually end up deployed to Afghanistan, if I have
Yeah.
my notes right. And
Yeah.
I feel like that there is a a preconception that
Yeah.
everyone who is goth and alternative is the same religion, same like beliefs, the same political beliefs, and all these
Yeah.
things. Where it's like, no, they're in every walk of life, including military service.
Yeah.
Um, but did you have to suppress all of that wonderful stuff that you discovered about yourself while you were in the
Oh, yeah.
military?
Yes. Oh, 100%. I mean, not so much in, like, my tastes, like, I went from being enlisted, I was a private, I went through basic training and infantry school and, like, did that, and then I had a knack for, like, planning and leadership stuff, I guess, because I talk to people like they're human beings and not robots, and I enjoyed that, so I went to the officer side. And as an officer, especially in the infantry, where our job is to go out and fight. Like that's the job of the infantry soldier is to kill the enemy. That is as simple as it gets. When you're in that kind of world, you don't want to necessarily do anything that like would make you lose legitimacy in the eyes of people that are looking to you to make decisions that could effectively end their lives or the opposite or get them out of a bad situation or whatever. So when like when I was an infantry officer in Germany with the unit that I deployed with to Afghanistan, I got sent to Germany because like I'm half German. It was my first language, and I studied it again in college, so I speak pretty decent German. And so I just asked the army. I was like, hey, can I go to Germany? My family's still there, and I just would prefer that over Fort Hood, Texas, which is like a whole nother thing. But they sent me to Germany, and while I was there, like I dressed very differently than I would like nowadays, but
This is kind of what I'm wondering of what that feels like to discover this part of yourself, have your world kind of your mind blown. You said
yeah,
you love makeup, you wanna, do these things, and now you've chosen a career path or a path of service where you can't express yourself,
yeah.
outwardly in that way. What does that do to your psyche?
I mean it sucks, but you learn to sort of accept it. And I had outlets though, so I very quietly would go off to like Nuremberg or Munich or Prague where there are huge goth scenes, and I would very quietly and by myself go. Not, I really didn't wear makeup at that point, but I would like wear all black, and I would just be, you know, I, like just a little bit more than I would normally dress up, just enough to feel like that sense of connection to this thing that I love. Um, but yeah, it was, it definitely wasn't like my favorite thing of having to kind of suppress it, but I also like got it in sneaky ways with like my platoon. Like when we were in Afghanistan, for example, most of the patrolling that we would do was like on foot, but we would sometimes drive out to really like far distances. And on the drives, we were not supposed to do this at all. It was very technically illegal. But there's like an intercom system. You wear like a headset with a microphone, and one of my guys spliced in a wire to that intercom system, and we had like an iPod, and we would just like rotate bringing on a playlist, and I would like force my dudes to listen to like Joy Division and Bauhaus and like all this like crazy stuff, Sisters of Mercy, and like they, and it's funny because that I think it's a testament to like goth music is that most people think of it as this very specific thing, and then they actually hear like real goth music and they're kind of like into it. And so many times, like my soldiers would be like, "Oh, what is this? What's this track, sir?" And I'd be like, "Oh, that's Black Planet by Sisters of Mercy or whatever." And they're just like, "Oh, that's cool."
Last year, you released a record called Modern Horrors. If I understand it correctly, it was based maybe in part or in full on your experience serving in the military. Um, what do you want people to know about what you saw and experienced, and why do you write about it?
Yeah, I mean, I So I think modern horror is a record that kind of it's looking at what's happening around us now
Mm.
through the lens of my own personal experiences in war, and also as a firefighter, like when I left the military, because I watched societal breakdown. I was a firefighter slash paramedic, so one shift I'd be on the fire engine, next shift I'm on the ambulance, and I did that job during the pandemic and during the lockdowns, and when COVID was like really really bad back in late 2020 into 2021. um so I started writing that third record when uh right around the time that unfortunately October 7th happened in Israel and Palestine. And I've like, I have a degree in religious history, and I've been to Israel and Palestine. I've like seen it firsthand. And I've I start, it was really an insane time because people were like, "Well, what do you think about this?" And I was like, I don't know. I know a lot, but I don't know enough to make some like commentary about it. So I started like reading a lot more. I read a few books, and I have, what I consider to be now a informed opinion based on fact. And but I started to watch this campaign under the auspices of like, well, we need to get the hostages back, and we need to destroy Hamas and all this sort of thing. But I watched this campaign of them systematically destroying a population by mass bombing, killing thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And like, America is paying for this. We're arming it. We are fundamentally creating the circumstances for that to occur, and what I consider a genocide. So I was watching that happen, and it's still happening. And simultaneously, we started to enter this like election cycle. And at first, to be completely honest with you, I did not think that Donald Trump had a snowball's chance in hell of winning that election at first. But then watching, this like sudden shift from Biden to Kamala Harris, and just watching like the establishment of like the Democratic Party do what it's best at doing, which is next to nothing. I started to get a really bad feeling that Donald Trump was going to win again.
I'm interested to talk to Goths around the world from different cultures about their
Right.
experiences. And I will admit that, until this call, I didn't really think about American Goths being part of that project because we're so close in
Yeah.
Canada and there's so many similarities in our
Right.
culture, our North American culture. But of course, at this moment in history, I do feel like a lot of American culture is very different from ours. So I do appreciate the perspective that you have on things, not only as an American, but as a veteran and as someone from, the state of Georgia in the South. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because I saw your posts on social media, I believe. There's my cat. Yes, hello. I have a cat. Um, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you at this time is I saw your post on social media, I believe on Memorial Day, where
Mhm.
you were reading, would you call it a protest note or a statement?
Mhm.
Um, why do you feel the need to speak out at this time?
A couple of years ago, I had this like moment where I was like, okay, cool. We have this big platform now. I have an obligation and a responsibility to speak out against things that I believe in. And I just think that, like, I don't know. I mean, to be completely honest with you, I kind of hate social media. I think it's really created way more problems than good. And I don't think that it's moving in a direction that's beneficial for humanity or society at large. But I think that we can still have moments of meaning and true creativity. And anyway, it's all just to say, like, I think that I really had a kind of epiphany moment where I was like, I have to make this count, and I can't just like take advantage of this to sell you a record or a t-shirt or whatever. Like I have to do that in order to survive and to be a musician, as I've, gone into this full time over the past few years. But, I don't know. I hate it when like something that you love musically or artistically it's not backed up by
Yeah.
meaning or like substance. It just feels like a product. It feels like fast fashion bullshit where it's like, buy this cool shirt. Cool. You're cool now. Like, I don't know. It just feels stupid.
You also have a young following, from your goth dad persona on TikTok, where you talk to baby bats, give them life advice, you know, make jokes and so
Yeah.
on. Although you haven't been doing that lately, you've been doing what I would call like more serious
Oh, yeah.
conversations. I've seen you speak out specifically about Nazis in the scene, about fascism in the scene, and why do you think it's important for young people who are in the scene, either because of music or aesthetics or whatever brings them to it? Why do you think it's important for them to know about like Nazi punks fuck off? Like,
Yeah.
why do you want to talk about that?
To me, it is pretty simple, to be honest. And I've always been very clear about this. I'm not the person that's trying to tell you what to believe. I don't think that you know, like what I believe politically is very, very different from a lot of people within the scene. I have a form of politics that I've essentially constructed, I've taken from different aspects of different, ideologies, and I recognize that it is not going to happen. It is out of the realm of reality. So I don't sit here and tell people you have to believe this to be in the goth scene. Like you have to be a Democrat or like whatever, which is insane. But what I will 100% tell these younger people is here is what you cannot believe and expect to be welcomed into a place where this is created first and foremost by people of color and queer people. Like rock and roll that leads to the goth scene created by people of color. And then the goth scene from the 80s and onwards has always been a safe haven for the queer community because of the inherent nature of it. So it's like, it's literally, it feels like to me like a Nazi walking into a synagogue or something. Like it's like you are saying like I don't care about what created this. This is a place for me now. So I'm going to participate in this cuz I like the molding on the building or whatever. Like it's it's a complete whitewashing of history and culture and facts. And that's the thing about, like the MAGA movement, what if you can even call it a movement, but like that ideology, they want to be perceived as edgy. They I see it constantly in comment sections, all these like boomers and like kind of old Gen Xers that are like, well, back in my day, punk was anti-establishment, and there's nothing more anti-establishment than Donald Trump. And I'm like, fuck off completely.
Fuck
Like,
off.
I just cannot, like, I can't even take it seriously on any basic level because I'm like, I mean, these people just don't have any understanding of like the backgrounds of the people that created these scenes, the ideologies that created these scenes, but also just like to believe that like Donald Trump is like against the establishment is the most preposterous concept in my mind.
Have you kicked people out of shows? Have you gotten into fights with people at shows? Do people try and pick a fight with you?
Uh I have to date kicked out like two people from a show or from a goth night. And like so the the hilariously terrible Jake Monroe. I don't know if you're familiar with this individual. He's a guy, I think he's in Ireland. He like literally every single video he makes on YouTube is like, I'm a goth and I'm looking at goth TikToks and making fun of them. So he's constantly punching down on people, but he also is like one of these guys that's like, oh, I don't like goth music and goth doesn't mean anything and it's all made up and blah blah blah. Like that guy made a video recently bringing attention to a video I made where I said, should MAGA be allowed in the goth club? And I say no, because they are advocating for the removal of queer people's rights, and they are trying to install a Christian nationalist form of government that is fascist in nature. Um, and his whole thing was, well, what are you going to do? Physically stop people from coming in? And I'm like, look, I'm sure that when I DJ or when I play, there are people that voted for Trump and that are true blue or true red conservatives or whatever that really believe in it. But I promise you they are not talking about it, and they're not like espousing those ideologies in those places, because they will be immediately sort of identified and been and like that's just not the place for it.
If you're going to say this is a safe space for weirdos, this is a safe space for queer people, trans people, um, you have to mean it. You can't just say that. There actually has to be some action
Exactly.
behind it to keep people safe, just like, women in clubs. Like, what's your policy? Like, yeah, are
Yeah,
you going to toss out this fucking drunk asshole or not? Right?
exactly.
Um, I had a couple things to ask you before I let you go. Of course, I want to know what's next for your band. I know that you're about to go on tour overseas, but what does the future look like for Vision Video?
Yeah, I'm working on a bunch of new music, and I've been taking a very different approach than I have in the past because, like, to be completely honest with you, the first two records, I was still learning like how to make music, how to write, how to compose, how to produce like quality stuff. It was a very new world to me, um, and not that you have to be super technically proficient to make music. I mean, none of those kids in the 80s that were making goth stuff knew what the hell they were doing. It was all just sort of off the cuff from punk. But I feel now that I am in a very different position looking at like writing and just sonically creating what I'm trying to create. Um, so I've been writing a lot, and I'm really returning to the roots of like what made me love all this stuff. So I've been listening to a lot of I've actually been trying to listen to things that informed the music that I like, instead of
Mm.
going, "Oh, well, like let's just listen to this Bauhaus record." Like what were they listening to? So I've been listening to a lot of like weird krautrock and like just bizarre psychedelic stuff and like dub and a million other things, just to try to find inspiration. But it's very loud, it's very aggressive, it's dancey, but it feels like kind of sexy and mysterious and just weird, and it just feels like it's hitting something that I feel like I've been trying to hit for a long time and haven't quite nailed yet, with the other three albums. So I feel like I think what is going to come next is going to really surprise some people. You hear hints of it in modern horror. There's like a little bit more aggression and a little bit darker kind of guitar driven stuff. But yeah, I think the next few releases are people are going to be like, "Whoa, this is very, very different." I'm doing some other stuff. Like I'm writing a book. I'm writing a horror novel, which is cool, and some of it incorporates parts of my like military past. It's about this guy who It's in the near future, and the conflict in Bosnia sort of reignites. And this guy goes through the U.S. military via NATO and the UN to go be a peacekeeper. And this
Mhm.
shape shifting creature that feeds off chaos and war follows him home and tries to destroy his life. So I'm writing that, and yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to like I've just been having like a really tough time with like the music industry aspect of
Oh,
being a
sure.
musician,
Sure.
and I fucking hate it. And I have to kind of have these like come to Satan moment, come to Jesus moments, whatever you want to call it, where I just like I stop myself from being like fuck this and quitting because I am number one, I'm inherently in love with creating music. I love it. Music has always been one of the most important aspects of my life. But secondly, like what I am able to do, what the universe has allowed me to do, like being a full-time musician, even though we're not some huge band and it still like can be a pretty, substantial struggle from time to time. Um I'm it's not lost on me. Like again, the preciousness of that is not lost on me, and it's something that I'm infinitely grateful for. And I don't ever want to like do that disservice or injustice, I don't ever want to be like, this sucks. Like, no, it doesn't. You moron. What do you
Well,
like?
I mean, cut yourself some slack. The music business does suck, and so does
It's
social
the
media,
industry. It's
and
the
so does streaming,
yeah.
and so does all of these things. That does kind of bring me to my last question, which is that, like, things are shitty out there,
Oh.
but what brings you hope?
uh when we play shows, and these younger kids come out, that are like 18, 19, 20, some of them, and I'm like, man, I'm old. But I look at them and I'm like, you guys are all right. Like they are so concerned with empathy and compassion and like making things better and like taking care of each other. And I watch people and I listen to what they're saying to each other, and I feel like these kids they're a cut above like what we were, when we were young. These kids are really, really genuinely concerned about like things that actually matter, and that's cool. And then absolutely, like, not to just lay it on thick or be cliche, but like the goth scene, just in general, like whenever I DJ here in Athens, we have like a group of, it's like four of us that DJ our goth night here, and it's not a big scene. It's like any given goth night we do it every month, like once a month. It'll be between 70 to 150 people, and that's like kind of
What's it called?
it's just called Athens Goth Night.
The it's just called Athens Goth Night? That's it?
Yeah,
That's what you got?
I mean, it's kind of funny to me because like I feel like every single goth night has a cool name. It's like we like at one point we called it like Void Transmission or something like that, and it's like I just think it's like kind of perfect that it's just so like Athens Goth Night, because it's a very it's a very like honest scene. The people that come to that are very it's probably the healthiest group of goth people I've ever seen, because they are just so like they are there for community and to dance and have a good time. It's not clicky, it's not dramatic and stupid. It's because it's too small for that. Uh,
Well, you gotta keep it going. You gotta keep it going for a few more years
oh
because,
yeah,
it's not really a fun time for us to cross the border right now, so I'm
yeah,
not gonna come to Athens, but I am gonna come to Athens Goth Night
yes,
in the future, the better future that
yes.
I imagine and that I hope for.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be crossing the border. We'll be up in like, Toronto and Montreal and all that in September. So
Thank you so much for the conversation.
of
I
course.
appreciate, everything that you do and everything that you have to say.
Likewise, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, and I hope I didn't talk too much. I have a tendency to do that.
That's what the edit button is for.